Single mother finds elderly couple abandoned at bus stop. What she does is moving. Jennifer Marie Carter held her youngest son's hand tightly while her other 5 children huddled around her on the wooden bench of the bus stop. Weariness weighed on her shoulders after another day searching for work in the city, and the hope of finding something that paid enough to support the family seemed increasingly distant. That's when she noticed they weren't alone at that isolated stop on the road connecting Hopeville to the city center. An elderly couple had been sitting at the other end of the bench for hours, shivering from the cold despite the late afternoon heat. Their worn-out clothes and lost gaze caught her attention. "Mom, those old folks have been here since yesterday," whispered Brandon, her 12-year-old son, the most observant of the bunch. Jennifer looked more closely and felt her heart tighten. The man, who must have been about 70, had his head down, holding the hand of a lady who seemed even more fragile. They only had a torn plastic bag with a few belongings. "Mr. Harold, Mrs. Dorothy." Jennifer stood up and approached, even though she didn't know them, using the respectful address she had learned since childhood. "Are you folks okay? Have you been here long?" The elderly man raised his tired eyes. He had dried tears on his face and an unshaven beard. "We're waiting." His voice came out weak, almost inaudible. "Waiting for someone who can help us." "Help how?" Jennifer knelt in front of them, forgetting for a moment her own difficulties. "Our children," began the elderly woman, Mrs. Dorothy, but her voice choked up. "They put us out of the house, said they couldn't take care of us anymore." Jennifer felt a growing anger in her chest. How could someone do that to their own parents? "How long have you been here?" 3 days, replied Mr. Harold, shame clear in his voice. "We have nowhere to go. Our pension only comes at the end of the month and it's not much." Jennifer's children approached curiously, but she gestured for them to be quiet. The situation was delicate. "And where will you sleep tonight?" "Right here," Mrs. Dorothy pointed to the bench. "It's not the first night." Jennifer looked at her 6 children, then at the 2 helpless elderly people. Her house was too small, 2 rooms that barely accommodated her family, but something inside her couldn't simply walk away and leave that couple out in the open. "Come with me," she said without a second thought. "Tonight you'll sleep in a warm place." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. Mr. Harold looked at her with suspicion. "Miss, you don't know us. Why would you do that?" "Because you're people like me and my children, and no one should be on the street." Jennifer extended her hand. "My house is simple, but it has a roof." The walk to Jennifer's house was silent. The children carried the elderly couple's bag and offered their arms for support. Brandon, always responsible, helped Mr. Harold, while 10-year-old Emily gave her hand to Mrs. Dorothy. When they reached the small wooden shack on the outskirts of Hopeville, Jennifer felt a pang of shame. The house was run down with leaks and windows that didn't close properly, but it was what she could afford with her irregular work as a cleaner. "It's not much," she murmured, opening the door. "It's a palace compared to the street," said Mrs. Dorothy, her eyes filling with tears of gratitude. That first night, Jennifer improvised a mattress on the living room floor with old blankets and pillows. She divided the bone broth, which was already scarce for 7 people among 9. No one complained, not even the little ones. After everyone fell asleep, Jennifer stayed awake thinking about the madness she had done. "I could barely support my own children, and now I had 2 more mouths to feed." But when I looked at the couple sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, I felt I had done the right thing. The next morning, while preparing weak coffee and bread with margarine for everyone, Jennifer tried to understand the elderly couple's situation better. "Tell me what happened," she asked, sitting at the small kitchen table. Mr. Harold took a deep breath before beginning. "We have 2 children, Richard and Patricia. We lived in a little house we bought 40 years ago downtown. Nothing fancy, but it was our home." "What happened to the house?" asked Jennifer. "Richard said he was in debt, that he was going to lose his business. He needed money urgently," Mrs. Dorothy continued the story. "He convinced us to sell the house to help him." "And you sold it?" "We sold everything and gave him the money. He promised that in 6 months he'd set up a bigger business and give us a good share of the profits." Mr. Harold's face twisted with bitterness. They said we could live with Patricia in the meantime. Jennifer shook her head, already guessing where the story was headed. Did Patricia accept it at first? For 2 months everything was fine, but then she started complaining. She said we were too much trouble, that the grandchildren made a mess because of us. Mrs. Dorothy wiped away a tear. One day we came home and our things were on the sidewalk. And Richard, didn't he help? He vanished, said Mr. Harold, his voice choked. He took our money and disappeared. Patricia said her problems are her own now. Jennifer felt a deep anger growing inside her. How could children be so cruel to the parents who raised them? Did you try to seek help somewhere? We went to social services, but they said the waiting list for shelter is very long. Our retirement isn't even enough to rent a studio. Mrs. Dorothy looked at her calloused hands. 70 years of working to end up on the street. At that moment, one of Jennifer's children, little 7-year-old Timothy, timidly approached Mrs. Dorothy. Grandma Dorothy, do you know how to make cake? The elderly woman smiled for the first time since Jennifer had met her. Yes, I do, my dear. Does your mother have sugar? We have a little bit, Jennifer replied, not knowing where this was leading. Then I'll teach you how to make cornmeal cake. It was my boy's favorite. Mrs. Dorothy stood up with more energy. While the elderly woman busied herself with the children in the kitchen, Mr. Harold pulled Jennifer aside. Mrs. Jennifer, you are very kind, but we can't stay here taking advantage of your generosity. You already have your own struggles. Mr. Harold, do you have a trade? I was a carpenter all my life. I worked in construction until I was 65. Then I set up a small workshop at home. But when we sold everything, he paused. Not even a screwdriver was left. Jennifer had an idea. What if we tried to borrow some tools? Do you still remember how to work with wood? These hands never forget. He looked at his own hands, still steady despite his age. But who would trust work to an old man with no home? Leave it to me, I'll figure something out. That afternoon, Jennifer went out with Mr. Harold to visit some neighbors. The first stop was at the house of Mrs. Margaret, a neighbor who had always been supportive. Mrs. Margaret, remember how you always complain about the wobbly kitchen table? Yes, I do, Jennifer. I've even thought about throwing it out. What if I brought someone who can fix it? For free, just so you can see his work. Mrs. Margaret looked suspiciously at Mr. Harold. Does he really know how to handle these things? 40 years of carpentry, said Jennifer proudly, as if speaking of her own father. All right, then. But if he ruins it, you're buying me a new one. Mr. Harold examined the table with the professional eye of someone who had spent his life working with wood. He quickly identified the problem, a loose screw, and one of the legs slightly warped. I need a drill, some wall plugs, and a larger screw, he said to Jennifer. Mr. Jack at the workshop might lend them, suggested Mrs. Margaret, taking an interest in the precise diagnosis. An hour later, the table was as sturdy as new. Mrs. Margaret was impressed with the quality of the work and the speed. Wow, Mr. Harold, you really have a knack for this. She ran her hand over the table, testing its sturdiness. How much do I owe you for the job? Nothing, Mrs. Margaret. We just wanted to show that the job would be done right. No, sir. Good work deserves payment. She went to the bedroom and returned with $20. It's what I can give now, but it's with great pleasure. On the way back home, Jennifer and Mr. Harold stopped to buy bread and milk with the money earned. It was little, but it represented dignity regained. Jennifer, I haven't felt useful in a long time, confessed Mr. Harold. Thank you for believing in me. You just needed an opportunity. Tomorrow we'll look for more work. The following week, news of Mr. Harold's good work spread through the neighborhood. 3 repair requests appeared, a chair with a broken leg, a cabinet with a stuck door, and a shelf that needed to be fixed to the wall. Meanwhile, Mrs. Dorothy won over the children with her cooking skills. Even with few ingredients, she managed to make tasty foods that went further and fed the family better. Grandma Dorothy taught us how to make banana bread with the peel, little Timothy excitedly told his mother. It's tasty and doesn't waste anything. Jennifer noticed that despite the difficulties, her home had gained new life with the presence of the seniors. The children had grandparents to tell them stories, and she had help with household chores and caring for the younger ones. But the financial situation remained tight. Even with Mr. Harold's sporadic jobs and the savings Mrs. Dorothy made with the food, the money barely covered basic needs. It was then that the landlord appeared demanding the overdue rent. "Jennifer, you are 2 months behind. Either pay this week or I'll have to ask you to leave." Mr. Bernard was a middle-aged man who had inherited several houses from his father. He wasn't a bad man, but he also wouldn't give up the money. "Mr. Bernard, I can pay on Friday when I get paid for a job." "Jennifer, you said that last month. I have bills to pay too." It was then that Mr. Harold approached. "Sir, what if I take a look at the problems with the house? The wood is warping, there are leaks, the windows don't close properly." "So what?" "I can do the repairs. My daughter here," he pointed to Jennifer, who was moved to be called that, "can deduct the cost of materials and labor from the rent." Mr. Bernard became thoughtful. He knew the house had needed repairs for some time, but he always put it off due to lack of money. "You really know about these things?" 40 years working with it. I can show you some jobs I've done here in the neighborhood." After seeing the work on Mrs. Margaret's table and speaking with other satisfied neighbors, Mr. Bernard accepted the proposal. Then it's settled. You fix the house and Jennifer gets up to date with the rent. In the following days, Mr. Harold worked with renewed dedication. He fixed the leaks, adjusted the windows, replaced rotten floorboards, and painted the exterior walls. Jennifer helped him after work, as did the older children. "I never thought my house could look this nice," said Jennifer, admiring the result. "A house needs care like a family," replied Mr. Harold, wiping sweat from his brow. But the peace didn't last long. One morning, Jennifer found Mrs. Dorothy crying in the kitchen. "What's wrong, Mrs. Dorothy?" "I dreamed about my little grandchildren. They must think we don't love them anymore." Jennifer felt her heart tighten. She hadn't considered the suffering of the elderly being away from their grandchildren, even after what their children had done. "Would you like to try to talk to them?" "Patricia made it very clear she doesn't want us around, and the boys must be angry that we haven't been in touch. What if we just went to see how they are, from a distance without bothering them?" That's how Jennifer and Mrs. Dorothy found themselves in front of the school where the elderly woman's grandchildren studied. It was recess and they could see them playing in the yard. "That one there is Nathan, he's 8. Mrs. Dorothy discreetly pointed to a boy playing alone in a corner. "And Madison, she's 10. Jennifer observed that the children really did seem sad, different from her own children who, even with difficulties, played with joy. "They seem downcast," commented Jennifer. "I raised them from babies when Patricia was working. We were very close." At that moment, Nathan looked in their direction. He recognized his grandmother immediately and came running to the school fence. "Grandma Dorothy, Grandma Dorothy." "My dear grandson," the elderly woman held the boy's hands through the fence, crying with emotion. "Grandma, why did you disappear? Mom said you don't love us anymore." "That's not true, my love. Grandpa and Grandma love you more than anything in the world." Madison noticed the commotion and came over too. Soon the two were pressed against the fence, asking their grandparents 1,000 questions. "Are you coming back home?" asked Madison. "Where are you living now?" Gabriel wanted to know. Mrs. Dorothy looked at Jennifer, not knowing how to respond, how to explain to the children that their own mother had thrown them out. "Grandpa and Grandma are living with friends now," said Jennifer, saving the situation. "But will you visit us?" "Whenever possible, my darlings," promised Mrs. Dorothy. When the siren sounded announcing the end of recess, the children said goodbye with tears in their eyes. They promised not to tell their mother they had met their grandparents, sensing it would cause trouble. On the way back, Mrs. Dorothy was inconsolable. "Jennifer, I need to be near my grandchildren. They need us." "We'll figure something out, Mrs. Dorothy. First, we need to get more settled. Then we'll think of a way for you to see the children regularly." That same week, something happened that would completely change the course of the story. Mrs. Faith, a 65-year-old lady who lived 2 streets over, appeared at Jennifer's door with an unusual proposal. "Jennifer, I heard you're doing sewing and carpentry services." "That's true, Mrs. Faith. Is there a problem?" "On the contrary, I have an old sewing machine that's been sitting idle for years. If Mrs. Dorothy knows how to use it, she can have it." Mrs. Dorothy almost fainted with emotion. She had been a professional seamstress until she was 50, when vision problems made her stop. "I still know how to sew, yes, Mrs. Faith, with great pleasure. And I have clothes that need adjustments. My daughters grew up and left several pieces that are now too big for me." It was the beginning of a new source of income. Mrs. Dorothy, even with her vision impaired by age, still had skillful hands. The first jobs were small adjustments, but soon requests for more elaborate repairs appeared. "Mom, Mrs. Dorothy sewed my pants that were torn," said Emily, showing the perfect work. "You can't even tell there was a hole." The news spread and women in the neighborhood began seeking sewing services. Mrs. Dorothy charged fair prices and did meticulous work, creating a loyal clientele. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like, and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out, now continuing. With the extra income from sewing combined with Mr. Harold's carpentry work, the household's financial situation began to improve. Jennifer was able to buy better quality food and even some new clothes for the children. "I never thought we'd have a decent life again," Mr. Harold confessed to Jennifer one night after everyone had gone to sleep. "You deserve so much more than you have," she replied, "and my children have gained the best grandparents in the world." "You saved us, Jennifer, not just from the streets, but from the despair of feeling useless." But their happiness would be tested once more. Patricia, the elderly couple's daughter, showed up unexpectedly at Jennifer's house on a Saturday afternoon. "Mom, Dad, what is this disgrace?" Mrs. Dorothy paled upon seeing her daughter. Mr. Harold stood up from the chair where he was fixing a broken toy for the children. "Patricia, my dear, don't you start with that. I found out you're here bothering this woman and doing poor people's work to survive." Jennifer, who was washing clothes in the backyard, heard the argument and approached. The children hid behind her, frightened by Patricia's aggressive tone. "Excuse me for interfering," said Jennifer politely but firmly, "but your parents aren't bothering anyone. They work and help with the expenses." "Don't you meddle in what's not your business." Patricia turned aggressively toward Jennifer. "They are my parents and I know what's best for them." "You know so much that you put them out on the street," the reply came out before Jennifer could control herself. "Excuse me?" Patricia stepped closer threateningly. "Patricia, don't talk to Jennifer like that," Mr. Harold intervened. "She took us in when you threw us out." "I didn't throw anyone out. You're the stubborn ones who don't want to go to a decent home." "What home?" asked Mrs. Dorothy. "You said there were no openings anywhere." "There is now. I got a spot at the St. Francis Senior Home. You'll have a bed, food, and medical care." Jennifer knew the place. It was an overcrowded public shelter where the elderly were left alone all day with no activities, waiting for their time to depart this world. "And what if they don't want to go?" asked Jennifer. "They will. I'm their daughter, and I have the authority to decide." "We don't want to go, Patricia," said Mrs. Dorothy in a trembling but determined voice. "Here we are useful. We have a family that cares for us." "Family?" Patricia laughed mockingly. "This woman is just taking advantage of your free labor." "Free labor?" Jennifer felt anger rising. "Your parents share all the household expenses. They work because they want to feel dignified, not because I force them." "And the grandchildren?" asked Mr. Harold timidly. "How are Nathan and Madison?" "Much better without you filling their heads with nonsense. Children need to obey, not be pampered by old people." Mrs. Dorothy began to cry. The thought of not seeing her grandchildren anymore was destroying her. "Patricia, at least let us see the children on weekends," she pleaded. "Absolutely not. You'll only teach them the wrong things like you taught me and Richard." "What wrong things?" asked Mr. Harold, confused. "This story about family, about sacrificing for others. Look where it got you. In a stranger's house, doing slave labor." Jennifer could no longer contain herself. "Get out of my house now." "I'll leave, but they're coming with me." "We are not going," said Mrs. Dorothy, standing up with more strength than she had shown in weeks. "Here we have love. You only offer us disguised abandonment. You'll regret this. When this woman gets tired of you, don't come looking for me." Patricia left, slamming the door. The elderly couple was shaken, but Jennifer reassured them. "You are welcome here for as long as you want to stay. This is your home too." "What if she comes back with some authority?" worried Mr. Harold. "We'll seek legal help." "No one can force you to go somewhere you don't want to." On Monday, Jennifer missed work to accompany the seniors to an appointment at the public defender's office. The lawyer, Attorney Ronald, attended to them carefully. "Based on your accounts, there's no way to force Lucid seniors into a shelter against their will," he explained. "But it's important to formalize the situation." "How so?" asked Jennifer. "Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy can make a statement that they are living with you of their own free will, and you can declare that you are voluntarily hosting them. Does that protect us?" "Legally, yes. And if their daughter tries any forced action, you'll have proof that there is no abandonment or mistreatment." The documents were arranged that same day. Leaving the public defender's office, the three felt safer, but Jennifer noticed that Mr. Harold was worried about something else. "What are you thinking, Mr. Harold?" "Jennifer, I'm afraid our presence here might cause problems for you and your children. Patricia could make something up to harm you." "I won't let her scare me. You are part of our family now." But Mr. Harold's concern proved to be well-founded. The following week, Jennifer received an unexpected visit from Child Protective Services. "Mrs. Jennifer Carter?" asked a very serious middle-aged woman. "That's me." "I'm social worker Marilyn Johnson. We received a complaint that you are keeping children in inadequate housing conditions." Jennifer's heart raced. She looked back and saw her children hiding behind Mrs. Dorothy, frightened. "Inadequate conditions like what?" "Overcrowding of the property and exposing the children to strangers." Jennifer immediately understood who had made the complaint. "May I know who reported it?" "That's confidential. May I come in to conduct an assessment?" Jennifer had no choice. The social worker went through the entire house, noting everything on a clipboard. She spoke with the children, asked about food, school, medical care. "The children seem well cared for," Marilyn admitted after an hour of inspection. "But the house really does have more people than recommended." "They are our grandparents," said Brandon, referring to the seniors. "They take care of us when Mom works." "Your grandparents?" The social worker looked confused at Jennifer. "They are not blood relatives," Jennifer explained, "but they are family all the same. Mrs. Jennifer, I will need you to regularize this situation. Either find a larger house or—" She made a significant pause. "Or what?" "Or the children will have to be removed from the property for safety reasons." Jennifer felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Losing her children was her greatest terror. "How much time do I have?" 15 days to arrange a solution." When the social worker left, Jennifer sat on the bed and broke down in tears. How could she get a bigger house on her income? And how could she choose between her children and the seniors she already considered parents? Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy approached. "Jennifer, we will leave," said Mr. Harold with a firm voice. "We can't cause this disruption in your life." "Absolutely not," Jennifer stood up determined. "We will find a solution together." "But Jennifer—" "No buts. We are a family, and families don't separate in difficult times." That night, after the children fell asleep, the three adults stayed up talking late, trying to find a way out. "What if we looked for a house to rent?" suggested Mrs. Dorothy. "With what money?" replied Jennifer. "Our income barely covers the rent here." "I have an idea," said Mr. Harold thoughtfully. "What if we started a bigger business? With my woodworking and Dorothy's sewing, we could try to rent a place that could serve as both a workshop and a home." "Is that possible?" "I know some warehouses in the industrial zone that are used for that. They are simple places, but larger and cheaper than conventional houses." The next day, the three went out to look for these warehouses. They found a perfect spot, a spacious area that had been a small carpentry shop with a 3-bedroom house attached. "How much is the rent?" asked Jennifer to the owner, Mr. Gerald. 800 Rs per month. But I need 3 months' deposit and a guarantor." Jennifer did the math mentally. Even combining all their incomes, they couldn't afford the deposit, nor did they have anyone to be a guarantor. "Mr. Gerald," tried Mr. Harold, "what if I did some repairs on the place in exchange for a discount?" "What kind of repairs?" "I see you have some old broken machines here. The roof is leaking. The doors are jammed." Mr. Gerald knew the value of a good carpenter. His old workshop had been idle for 2 years precisely due to maintenance issues. "How long would it take you to fix all this?" 1 month, working part-time. I can get everything working like new." And how much would you charge for the service? 2 months' rent and waive the deposit. Mr. Gerald thought for a few minutes. It was a beneficial proposal for him too. I accept, but I want you to start tomorrow. That's how the family found a solution to the space problem. But they still needed to solve the issue of income to maintain the larger place. We need to get more clients, said Jennifer, both for the carpentry and the sewing. What if we had an opening party, suggested Mrs. Dorothy. We invite the whole neighborhood to get to know our services. The idea was good, but they didn't have money for a party. That's when Mrs. Margaret, Mr. Harold's first client, appeared with a proposal. I heard you're setting up a bigger workshop. How about I sponsor a party in exchange for a discount on future services? The neighbors' solidarity surprised everyone. Mrs. Faith offered the savory snacks, Mr. Jack lent the tools they still needed, and even the local church priest showed up to bless the new business. On opening day, more than 50 people visited the workshop. Mr. Harold gave carpentry demonstrations, and Mrs. Dorothy showed her sewing techniques. Jennifer's children helped serve the guests, and explained how the grandparents had changed their lives. I've never seen a family so united without being blood-related, commented a visitor to Jennifer. Love builds bonds stronger than genetics, she replied, watching Mrs. Dorothy teach Emily how to embroider. By the end of the day, they had a schedule with 20 orders for the first month. Between furniture to repair, clothes to alter, and a new wardrobe to make, the income promised to cover all the warehouse expenses. We did it, sighed Jennifer, relieved. We're going to have our home and our work in the same place. But the joy didn't last long. Mid-week, Patricia appeared again, this time accompanied by a man in a suit. Attorney Frederick is my lawyer, she introduced with an air of superiority. We've come to inform you that I am filing for the interdiction of my parents. Interdiction? Jennifer didn't understand what it was about. When elderly people no longer have the capacity to decide for themselves, the family can ask the court to appoint a legal guardian, explained the lawyer in a pompous tone. Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy turned pale. But they are perfectly lucid, protested Jennifer. That will be decided by a medical examination, replied Patricia. People their age who accept living in precarious conditions are obviously not in their right mind. Precarious conditions. Jennifer looked around the clean and organized warehouse. Here they have work, purpose, and affection. They have exploitation, Patricia retorted. My parents working like slaves to support a woman and 6 children who are nothing to them. Patricia, said Mrs. Dorothy with a trembling but firm voice, we chose to be here. Jennifer isn't exploiting us. She saved us. Mother, you're not seeing reality. This woman is taking advantage of your goodwill. The reality is that you abandoned us, said Mr. Harold, finding his courage. And Jennifer gave us a new family. A new family? Patricia laughed sarcastically. You're being deceived. Soon you'll discover her true intentions. What true intentions? Asked Jennifer, offended. Using 2 elderly people as cheap labor to support her large family. Any decent person would see that as exploitation. Any decent person wouldn't abandon their own parents. The retort came out before Jennifer could control herself. Watch what you say, threatened the lawyer. We can sue you for slander. Get off my property, said Jennifer, pointing to the door. We will, but we'll be back with a court order to get my parents. After they left, the family was shaken. The threat of guardianship was serious and could separate them all. Jennifer, maybe it's better if we do leave, said Mrs. Dorothy, crying. We don't want you to lose your children because of us. And I don't want to lose you, replied Jennifer, hugging the elderly woman. We'll fight this. The next day, Jennifer returned to the public defender's office. Attorney Ronald received her with concern. The situation is complicated, Jennifer. Patricia has the right to petition for guardianship, even if it's for her own interests. But how do we prove the elderly are capable? We'll need detailed medical reports and witnesses who can prove they are independent and make conscious decisions. And if she gets the guardianship? Patricia would have the legal authority to decide where they live and how they live. Jennifer left the public defender's office with a heavy heart. How could one person have so much power over their own parents' lives? That afternoon, while working on repairing a chair, Mr. Harold called Jennifer for a private talk. Jennifer, there's something we didn't tell you about our story. What is it, Mr. Harold? Richard, Our son didn't just disappear with our money. He forged our signatures on the house sale documents. Jennifer stopped sanding the wood. What do you mean? I was hospitalized after a minor stroke. I couldn't sign my own name properly. Dorothy was taking care of me at the hospital. Richard took advantage of that to forge our documents. Do you have proof of this? We have the medical papers from the hospital, and Dorothy suspects Patricia knew about the scam. Why didn't you tell me this before? Shame, confessed Mr. Harold. It's hard to accept that our own children robbed us. Jennifer understood the scale of the problem. If they could prove the fraud, perhaps they could reverse the house sale and even sue the children for fraud. But that would mean facing a long and painful legal battle. Do you want to try to get the house back? I don't know, Jennifer. At this point, we just want to live in peace. But if the house is returned to you, Patricia wouldn't be able to claim you have nowhere to live anymore. Mrs. Dorothy joined the conversation. Jennifer is right, Harold. If we recover our house, we can live there and keep our workshop here. It would be the best of both worlds. It was a difficult but necessary decision. They resolved to fight for their rights, even if it meant facing their own children in court. Attorney Ronald was excited by the new information. With the medical documents and the evidence of fraud, we have a real chance to reverse the sale and also sue for fraud. How long would that take? Several months. But in the meantime, we'll file for a preliminary injunction to prevent the guardianship of your adoptive parents. Adoptive parents? The expression moved Jennifer. That was exactly what they were to her and her children. The following weeks were intense. While awaiting the court decisions, the workshop grew larger each day. The quality of Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy's work attracted clients from across the region. We have orders for the next 2 months, celebrated Jennifer, organizing the requests. And I secured a contract to make school uniforms for 3 schools in the area, added Mrs. Dorothy. The business was thriving, but the legal situation was still uncertain. At any moment, Patricia could appear with a court order. That's when something unexpected happened. Nathan and Madison, the elderly couple's grandchildren, ran away from home and showed up at the workshop. "Grandpa! Grandma!" The two threw themselves into their grandparents' arms. "How did you get here?" asked Mrs. Dorothy, worried. "We took 2 buses," said Nathan. "We asked many people until someone showed us the way." "Kids, your mother must be desperate," said Jennifer. "We left a note saying we were okay," explained Madison. "We said we were going to visit our grandparents." "Why did you do this?" "Because Mom said you don't love us anymore," cried Nathan, "and that we'll never be able to see you again." Mrs. Dorothy hugged her grandchildren with tears in her eyes. "That's not true, my darlings. Grandpa and Grandma love you more than anything in the world." "Then why did you leave home?" "Because—" Mrs. Dorothy looked at Jennifer, asking for help. "Because sometimes adults disagree about what's the best way to care for the people they love," Jennifer explained gently. "Your mother thought it would be better for your grandparents to live somewhere else." "But we want you near us," said Madison. "And we want to be near you too," replied Mr. Harold. The problem was how to resolve that situation without traumatizing the children further. Jennifer knew Patricia would soon discover where her children were and would come to get them, furious. "Kids," said Jennifer, "you need to go back home, but we promise we'll find a way for you to see your grandparents more often." "Do you really promise?" asked Nathan. "I promise," said Mrs. Dorothy, sealing the commitment with a kiss on her grandson's forehead. Jennifer called Patricia, who arrived an hour later accompanied by 2 neighbors as witnesses. She expected to find a chaotic situation, but instead found the children playing quietly with Jennifer's kids while the grandparents helped with homework. "Nathan, Madison, you almost drove me crazy." Patricia hugged her children with relief. "Sorry, Mom, but we wanted to see our grandparents," said Madison. "And I've told you that can't happen anymore." "But why?" cried Nathan. "They're nice, they teach us cool things, and they take care of us." Patricia looked around and realized the workshop was very different from what she expected. The place was clean, organized, and the children seemed happy and well cared for. "Patricia," said Mrs. Dorothy, "you could let the children visit us on weekends. We would feel very good, and so would they. I don't want my children to be confused by this situation." "What situation?" asked Mr. Harold. Grandparents who love their grandchildren? You abandoned our family to live with strangers. That confuses the children about what family loyalty is. We didn't abandon anyone, Mrs. Dorothy retorted with unusual firmness. You put us out on the street because we couldn't take proper care of you. And now we can take care of ourselves, said Mr. Harold, showing the workshop in operation. We work, we earn our living, and we help a family that took us in. One of the neighbors accompanying Patricia whispered something in her ear. Jennifer noticed the woman was impressed by what she saw. Patricia, said the neighbor, I know it's none of my business, but your parents seem to be doing well here, and the children are beaming with joy. Mrs. Caroline, you don't understand the situation. I do understand, dear. I understand that sometimes pride prevents us from admitting when we're wrong. Patricia was visibly bothered by her neighbor's comment in front of her children. Let's go, kids. Can I come back tomorrow? Asked Nathan to Mrs. Dorothy. No, you cannot, Patricia replied before the grandmother could speak. But, Mom, no buts, we're going home now. On the way to the car, Madison looked back, waving to her grandparents. The scene broke Mrs. Dorothy's heart. One day she'll understand, Jennifer consoled. The children will grow up and make their own choices. I hope it won't be too late, sighed Mrs. Dorothy. The following week, Attorney Ronald brought important news about the case. We obtained an injunction preventing the interdiction until the case is fully adjudicated. And about the house. The news there is even better. The handwriting analysis proved the signatures were forged. The judge has already ordered a freeze on all of Richard's assets until he returns the money or the property. Jennifer could hardly believe it. After so much suffering, justice was finally being served. And what happens now? Richard has 15 days to appear and explain where the money from the sale is. If he doesn't show up, the house automatically reverts to your parents. And Patricia? Since it was proven she knew about the fraud and helped hide her brother, she can also be charged as an accomplice. When they told the news to Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy, the two were silent for several minutes. I still can't believe it, said Mrs. Dorothy. After all this time, are we getting our house back? It seems so, replied Jennifer, emotional. And you deserve that and much more. But Jennifer, said Mr. Harold, if we recover the house, we don't want to leave you. This family is our family now. And you are our family too. We'll find a way to stay together. The idea that emerged was perfect. The senior home was just 3 blocks from the workshop. They could live there and continue working with Jennifer during the day. It would be the best of both worlds, independence and family unity. Richard did not appear by the deadline. 2 weeks later, the judge formalized the return of the house to the parents. When they went to take possession of the property, they found it in a sorry state. Richard rented the house out and the tenants didn't take care of anything, observed Mr. Harold, looking at the peeling walls and the garden that had been Mrs. Dorothy's pride, completely abandoned. Don't worry, Mr. Harold, said Jennifer. We'll renovate everything. With your carpentry knowledge and our workforce, this house will be better than before. And so it was. Over the next 2 months, the whole family worked on renovating the house. Jennifer and the children painted the walls. Mrs. Dorothy took charge of refurbishing curtains and cushions, while Mr. Harold fixed all the structural problems. This house has new life, said Mrs. Dorothy the day they moved back in, just like us. The most touching part was that Nathan and Madison could finally visit their grandparents at home. Patricia, facing a lawsuit and pressure from the neighborhood itself which supported the seniors, conceded to supervised visits on weekends. Grandma, the house is even prettier than before, said Madison, admiring the garden that Mrs. Dorothy had rebuilt with the help of Jennifer's daughters. That's because now it was made with true love, replied the grandmother, hugging her granddaughter. The workshop grew so much that Jennifer had to hire 2 helpers from the neighborhood itself. Mr. Harold became a regional reference in carpentry, and Mrs. Dorothy had more sewing orders than she could handle. I never imagined that after 70 I'd start a new life, confessed Mr. Harold to Jennifer one afternoon, while teaching Brandon how to use a hand plane. Life always offers fresh starts to those with the courage to accept them, she replied, watching Mrs. Dorothy teaching Emily to embroider. The most surprising ending came 6 months later. Patricia, who had lost the court case and been sentenced to community service, showed up at her parents' house asking for forgiveness. "Mom, Dad, I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted to apologize." Mrs. Dorothy and Mr. Harold looked at each other. Forgiveness wasn't easy after so much pain, but they knew that holding a grudge would only hurt more. "Patricia, you are our daughter and will always be welcome," said Mrs. Dorothy. "But now we have rules for our relationship." "What rules?" "Respect for our life choices and for the family we've built with Jennifer and the children." "And unrestricted visits with Nathan and Madison," added Mr. Harold. "They need their grandparents and we need them." Patricia agreed to everything. The court process and the possibility of losing the children to their father, who had sought custody after discovering the whole situation, had made her rethink her actions. "Jennifer," Patricia said on the day of the reconciliation, "thank you for taking care of my parents when I didn't know how." "They took care of me too," replied Jennifer. "They saved my family just as much as I saved theirs." On the first anniversary of the day they met at the bus stop, the whole family gathered to celebrate. There were 17 people around the table: Jennifer and her 6 children, Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy, Patricia with Nathan and Madison, the 2 workshop employees with their wives and children. "A year ago, we were all lost people," said Jennifer, raising a glass of juice. "Today, we are a real family." "A family born from love, not blood," added Mrs. Dorothy. "And one that will keep growing," said Mr. Harold, looking at the children playing together in the backyard. Brandon, who now at 13 helped in the workshop every day after school, stood up to make a toast. "To my grandparents, Harold and Dorothy, who taught me that family is who stays when things get tough. And to my second mom, Jennifer, who taught us that there's always room for more love in a home," said Nathan, surprising everyone with his maturity. Mrs. Dorothy cried with emotion. In 1 year, she had lost everything and gained so much more. She had lost a house but gained a true home. She had lost financial security but found a life purpose. She had almost lost her grandchildren, but now saw them every week and even helped care for 6 other children who called her grandma. "Jennifer," she said later, when they were alone washing dishes, "you saved our lives, but I think we saved yours too." "How so, Mrs. Dorothy?" "You were so overwhelmed trying to be both father and mother to 6 children. Now you have help, you have support, you have people who share the responsibilities." Jennifer stopped to think. It was true. Since the seniors had come into her life, she no longer felt alone in raising her children. She had wise advice from Mr. Harold, maternal affection from Mrs. Dorothy, and most importantly, she had seen her children learn values she might not have been able to teach alone. "It's true," agreed Jennifer. "You gave me a real family too." "And the best part," said Mrs. Dorothy, smiling, "is that our stories are still being written. Who knows what the future holds for our crazy family?" Jennifer smiled, looking out the kitchen window, where Mr. Harold was teaching the boys to plant in the yard, while the girls helped Patricia bake a cake. "I know the future will be good," she said, "because we'll build it together." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 2 years after that conversation, the workshop had become a small business known throughout the region. Jennifer, who had started as a cleaner, was now the owner of a thriving business, employing 12 people from the community. "Mrs. Jennifer, a special order has arrived," said Mr. Harold one morning, holding an official paper. "What is it?" "The City Hall wants us to make all the furniture for the new municipal school." Jennifer could hardly believe it. It was the largest order they had ever received. "And how are we going to handle such a big demand?" "I've already thought about that. We'll need to expand the workshop and hire more people. How about we turn this into a cooperative?" The idea was revolutionary. Instead of Jennifer being the sole owner, all the workers would become partners in the business. Each would have responsibilities and share in the profits. "Mr. Harold, this is risky. What if it fails?" "Jennifer, you taught me that when something is done with love and honesty, it always works out." The proposal was presented to all the employees in an emotional meeting. Some were apprehensive, but most supported the idea. "Mrs. Jennifer has always been fair with us," said Jack, one of the hired carpenters. "If she believes in this, I believe in it too. And besides," added Marianne, who ran the sewing department with Mrs. Dorothy, "our community deserves to have a business that is truly ours." The United Hands Cooperative was officially founded on a Sunday in September, with a celebration in the central square of Hopeville. More than 300 people attended to support the new venture. "When I left home that morning looking for a job, I never imagined that 2 years later I'd be opening my own company," said Jennifer in her opening speech. "And we never imagined that after being evicted by our own children, we'd become entrepreneurs in our golden years," added Mr. Harold, drawing applause from the crowd. Mrs. Dorothy, who at 75 now led a team of 8 seamstresses, received the loudest applause when she stepped onto the makeshift stage. "Folks, life has taught me that there's no age to start over. At 70, I was on the street without hope. Today, at 75, I'm a partner in a thriving business. And it's not just about money," she continued. "It's about dignity. Here, everyone is respected, everyone has value, everyone is important." The cooperative's success attracted the attention of the regional media. A television crew from Capital City came to do a special report on the story of the family that had formed at the bus stop. "Mrs. Jennifer," asked the reporter, "what is the secret to your success?" "There's no secret," Jennifer replied simply. "The secret is to treat people like family and work with honesty." "And you, Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy, how do you feel about being an example for other seniors in the country?" "We feel useful," replied Mr. Harold. "For a long time we thought our lives were over. Now we know they've just begun again." The report had a national impact. Dozens of letters arrived from all over the United States, telling similar stories and asking for advice on how to start over after 60. "Look at this letter, Jennifer," said Mrs. Dorothy one afternoon, organizing the mail. "It's from a lady in Portland who was abandoned by her children and wants to know how to start an embroidery business. And this one here is from a gentleman in Miami who lost his mechanic's shop and wants to set up a cooperative in his neighborhood," added Mr. Harold. Jennifer had an idea. "What if we created a project to help other people in our situation?" "How do you mean?" "A program to teach seniors and single mothers how to set up worker cooperatives. We could provide consulting, teach what we learned, help other communities." The idea evolved quickly. With support from the City Hall and a non-governmental organization from the capital, the Fresh Start Project was born. The goal was to visit underserved communities and teach the cooperative techniques that had worked in Hopeville. "Our first destination will be Riverdale," announced Jennifer at a cooperative meeting, "a town of 20,000 inhabitants that is going through economic difficulties. Who's going on the first trip?" "Me, Mrs. Dorothy, and Mr. Harold. We'll stay there for a week teaching and organizing." "And the children?" asked Mrs. Dorothy. "Brandon and Emily will come with us. They can help with the children there while we work with the adults." The first trip of the Fresh Start Project was a success. In Riverdale, they found a situation similar to what they had experienced. Many seniors abandoned by their families and single mothers struggling to survive. "History repeats itself everywhere," observed Mrs. Dorothy, talking to a group of ladies who wanted to learn sewing. "But the solution can also repeat itself," replied Jennifer, teaching basic management techniques to a group of women interested in forming a food cooperative. In a week, they helped form 3 productive groups in Riverdale: a sewing cooperative, a carpentry cooperative, and a homemade food cooperative. "You've planted a seed here," said the mayor of Riverdale at the farewell. "A year from now, these cooperatives will be transforming our town." Upon returning to Hopeville, the family was even more united and confident about the future. The children had matured greatly with the experience of helping others. "Auntie," said Brandon, now 15, "I want to study business administration in college to help better with the cooperatives. And I want to learn design to make new clothing patterns," added Emily, at 12 years old. Jennifer was moved seeing how her children had embraced the family's cause. "You can study whatever you want," she promised. "The cooperative will pay for all of your studies." It was a promise kept. In the following years, all of Jennifer's children were able to study. Brandon graduated in business administration and returned to modernize the cooperative's management. Emily studied fashion design and created her own clothing line that became a regional success. The other children also found their callings. Timothy became a carpenter like Mr. Harold. Anna-Marie became a nurse and organized the cooperative's occupational health sector. Peter chose agronomy and set up an organic garden that supplied the company cafeteria, and Sophia studied education and created a daycare for the children of the cooperative members. "Look at what we've done," said Mrs. Dorothy on the cooperative's 5th anniversary, watching over 100 people working in the complex that now occupied an entire city block. "We made a family that became a community," replied Jennifer, seeing Gabriel and Madison, now teenagers, teaching younger children in the educational toy workshop. Mr. Harold, at 78 years old, still worked every day, but now more as a mentor than as a laborer. "My greatest pride," he said to a group of visitors from another town, "is not having built this business. It's having helped build people." "How so, Mr. Harold?" "Look at that young man over there." He pointed to Timothy, now a 20-year-old. "When I met him, he was 7 years old and lost. Today he is one of the best carpenters in the region and still teaches other young people. And that young lady," he pointed to Emily, "was 10 years old and dreamed of being a fashion designer. Today she has her own brand and employs 15 people just in the clothing sector. But the most important thing," he continued, "is that they all learned to look at people with affection." None of them forgot where they came from. It was true. Even with the cooperative's success, the family maintained the simple values that had united them in the beginning. Every Sunday they gathered at Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy's house for the traditional lunch, and every first Friday of the month they visited the bus stop where it all began, to remember the journey and help other people who might be going through difficulties. "We found another family in a difficult situation," reported Sophia on one of these visits. "A grandmother with 5 grandchildren living on the streets." "Where are they now?" asked Jennifer. "Sleeping at the bus terminal. The grandmother is sick and can't work." "Bring them to the cooperative tomorrow morning. We'll give her work and school for the children," Jennifer decided immediately. "But Jennifer," pondered Brandon, "we've already helped dozens of families. The cooperative can't support everyone." "Brandon, you're right about financial sustainability, but you're wrong about our capacity to help." "What do you mean, Mum?" "Every family we help becomes productive and independent. We're not supporting anyone for free. We're creating opportunities for people to support themselves." "It's true," agreed Mrs. Dorothy. "Look at how many of the families we helped became cooperative members or started their own businesses." The cooperative's open-door policy continued to generate growth. Each year, new families were welcomed, trained, and integrated into the productive system. Some became cooperative members, others started independent businesses, and all maintained bonds of friendship and mutual support. "We created a solidarity network that feeds itself," Jennifer explained in the talk she gave to business people and public managers interested in the model. "When you help someone get back on their feet, that person not only becomes productive, but also starts helping others. It's a virtuous cycle." The Hopeville model spread throughout Mid-State. 15 cities adopted similar cooperatives, all advised by the Fresh Start Project. Thousands of people found work, dignity, and a new chance in life. "You've created a quiet revolution," said the state governor during an official visit to the cooperative. "We didn't create any revolution," replied Mr. Harold. "We just put into practice what everyone should know, to take care of each other." "But this is changing the region's economy." "It's changing the people," corrected Mrs. Dorothy. "The economy is a consequence." On the 10th anniversary of the meeting at the bus stop, the celebration was grand. Hopeville's Central Square hosted a festival that lasted 3 days, with cultural performances, exhibitions of cooperative products, and fairs from other cities in the project. "Jennifer," said the mayor at the opening, "on behalf of the population of Hopeville, we want to honor you and your family for what you've done for our city." "Mr. Mayor, we are the ones who are thankful. This city welcomed us when we had nothing and gave us the chance to build a new life." "But you repaid it by generating jobs and opportunities for hundreds of families." "That wasn't repayment," Mr. Harold interjected into the microphone. "It was love. When you love a place and the people in that place, working for the common good isn't an obligation. It's a pleasure." The speech moved the crowd. Many people in the audience were former beneficiaries of the cooperative's social projects and now had their own prosperous lives. "Mrs. Jennifer," shouted someone from the crowd, "tell everyone how it all began." Jennifer smiled, took the microphone, and looked at the family gathered on the stage. Her 6 children now accomplished adults. Her 2 adoptive parents still active and full of energy. Patricia, with her grandchildren Nathan and Madison, already in college, and dozens of friends who had become family over the years. "It all began at a bus stop," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I was coming back from yet another day without finding a job, tired, hopeless, just trying to survive with 6 small children. That's when I saw 2 abandoned elderly people shivering from the cold. In that moment, I had 2 choices: pretend I didn't see it or do something. I chose to do something, and that choice changed all of our lives. Because when you reach out to help someone, you're not just saving that person, you're saving yourself too. I thought I was just offering a roof to 2 old folks, but they gave me so much more. They gave me parents. They gave grandparents to my children. They taught me values that I couldn't have passed on alone. And most importantly," continued Jennifer, now crying, "they taught me that family isn't just blood. Family is a choice. Family is who stays when everything gets hard." The crowd erupted in applause. Many people were crying, moved by the story they knew, but which never failed to touch them. "Mr. Harold," someone shouted, "say something too." The elderly man, now 83 years old, approached the microphone with the help of a cane he had made himself. "My friends," he began, his voice still firm, "at 70 years old, I thought my life was over. I was on the street, with no home, no money, no hope. Today, at 83, I can say the last 13 years have been the best of my life, because I discovered that life doesn't end when you get old, it just changes form. And if you're lucky enough to find good people on your path," he looked at Jennifer, "that change can be for the better. Much better." Mrs. Dorothy also wanted to speak. "I just want to thank," she said, her voice trembling but full of joy, "God for putting Jennifer on our path. And all the families we've welcomed and who have welcomed us over these years. Today I have 6 children, 22 adoptive grandchildren, and a family of over 100 people. When you open your heart to love, it multiplies. There's always room for more." Nathan, now 20 years old and an engineering student, asked for the microphone. "I wanted to speak on behalf of my generation," he said. "We grew up seeing our biological grandparents being rejected and then being reborn into a new family. That taught us that the strongest bonds aren't the ones we're born with, but the ones we choose to build. Jennifer, Brandon, Emily, Timothy, Anna Marie, Peter, and Sophia," he named all of Jennifer's children. "You're not just our adoptive cousins. You're our heart siblings. And Grandma Jennifer," he addressed her directly, "thank you for teaching us that a family can be built with love, work, and dedication." Madison, 19 years old and studying psychology, also wanted to speak. "I want to be a psychologist to help other families who go through situations like ours," she said, "because I learned here that it's always possible to start over. It's always possible to forgive. It's always possible to love more." The most emotional moment was when Patricia asked for the microphone. "I know I don't deserve to be here," she began, visibly nervous. "For a long time, I was the villain of this story. I abandoned my parents. I denied my children their grandparents' love, and I almost destroyed one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. But Jennifer," she turned to her adoptive sister-in-law, "you taught me that forgiveness is possible when there is true remorse. My parents," she looked at Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy, "thank you for forgiving me and allowing me to be part of this family again. And thank you for giving me the greatest gift a daughter can receive, the example of how to get back up after falling. Today I work at the cooperative. I contribute to our community, and I teach my children the values I learned by watching you. I'm no longer the daughter who abandoned her parents. I'm the daughter who learned to value family." Patricia's speech especially moved Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy, who had never lost hope of winning back their daughter. "Patricia," said Mrs. Dorothy, You have always been our daughter. What changed is that now you choose to be our daughter, and that makes all the difference." To close the evening, Jennifer made a final address. "Friends," she said, "this celebration isn't just to commemorate our story, it's to inspire other stories. In every city, in every neighborhood, there are people needing help and people capable of helping. Don't wait for someone to come solve your community's problems. Be that person yourselves. Start small, like we did. One family helping another, one neighbor looking out for another, and you will see that small actions can generate great transformations. The United States we want won't be built by politicians or business people. It will be built by ordinary people doing extraordinary things out of love, like everything we've done here." The celebration ended with everyone singing the national anthem, but with a different feeling. It wasn't empty patriotism, but genuine pride in being part of a country where stories like that one were possible. In the months that followed, dozens of new cooperatives emerged across the interior of the United States, all inspired by the Hopeville model. The movement gained a name, the economy of affection, based on the idea that prosperous businesses could be built on genuine human relationships. "We received an invitation to speak at the university in New York," Brandon told the family at a meeting, "and the Department of Social Development wants to use our model as a reference for public policies," added Jennifer. "Does that mean we're going to Washington, D.C.? asked Mrs. Dorothy, worried. "No, Mrs. Dorothy," reassured Jennifer. "Our place is here with our community. We can guide other people without abandoning our work." "Thank goodness," sighed Mr. Harold. "At 83, I'm too old for adventures anymore." "Too old," joked Jennifer. "Says the man who started a new career at 70. Well, when you put it that way." The national recognition also brought responsibilities. Jennifer began traveling across the country once a month, consulting for municipal governments and social organizations interested in the cooperative model. "Where are you going this time?" asked Emily, now in charge of the cooperative's creative department. "Montana. An indigenous reservation wants to set up a crafts cooperative." "And you're going alone?" "I'm taking Mr. Harold. His knowledge in woodworking could help with the woodwork." "Mom," interjected Timothy, "Mr. Harold is 84. Do you think he can handle a trip like that?" "Timothy," replied Mr. Harold before Jennifer could speak, "as long as I can walk and think, I will keep helping people. Age is just a number." "And besides," added Mrs. Dorothy, "do you think I'm going to let my husband travel alone with a beautiful woman like Jennifer?" Everyone laughed. Even after so many years, Mrs. Dorothy was still jealous of the adopted daughter who had become her husband's confidant and travel companion. "Mrs. Dorothy," joked Jennifer, "after 15 years living together, you still don't trust me." "I trust you." "It's him I don't trust," she replied, pointing at her husband, who feigned indignation. The teasing was the spice of their family life. Even with success and recognition, they maintained the simplicity and humor that had always characterized them. The trip to Montana was a success. In 2 weeks, they helped organize a cooperative that brought together artisans from 5 different villages. The project generated income for 200 indigenous families and preserved traditional techniques for working with wood and natural fibers. "Every place we visit has its own particularities," observed Mr. Harold on the flight back. "But the principle is always the same, bringing together people willing to work for a common goal. And treating everyone with respect and affection," added Jennifer. "This works in any culture. Back in Hopeville, they found the cooperative running normally under the direction of Jennifer's children. The generational transition was happening naturally, with the younger ones taking on responsibilities, while the founders dedicated themselves more to the expansion project." "How have things been here?" asked Jennifer to Brandon. "Everything's normal. We closed 3 new contracts and production is on schedule." "And the social initiatives?" "Sophia welcomed 2 families of Venezuelan refugees. Anna Marie organized a community health drive. Peter expanded the organic garden. And Emily created a special clothing line for seniors that's becoming popular in 5 states, added Timothy. Jennifer was moved hearing about her children's initiatives. They had completely absorbed the family values and were applying them in creative and modern ways. "You've grown up," she said, proud. "We grew up well raised," replied Emily. We learned from the best teachers. What teachers? Asked Mrs. Dorothy. You, Grandma Dorothy, who taught us that love is shown through care. Grandpa Harold, who taught us that work done with care is always perfect. And Mother Jennifer, who taught us that there's always room for one more person at the table and in the heart. The next day, the family received an unexpected visit. Richard, the son of Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy, who had disappeared with the house money, appeared at the cooperative's door. "Dad, Mom," he said, visibly ashamed. Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy were frozen. They hadn't seen their son in 15 years. "Richard?" Mrs. Dorothy barely managed to pronounce the name. "It's me, Mom. I've come to ask for forgiveness." The silence was long and heavy. Jennifer realized it was better to leave the family alone and let everyone else into the workshop. "Where have you been all these years?" asked Mr. Harold. "Running from my conscience," replied Richard. "The money I took from you was gone in 6 months. I lost everything gambling. And then? I lived on the streets, did odd jobs, went hungry, slept rough. I learned firsthand what you went through because of me." Mrs. Dorothy began to cry, but not from anger. It was pain mixed with relief at seeing her son alive. "Why did you come back now?" she asked. "Because I saw a news report about you on television. I saw what you built, I saw how respected you are, I saw that you found a new family. And I realized I lost the chance to be part of the most beautiful family that ever existed." "Richard," said Mr. Harold, "you are our son and always will be, but we can't pretend what happened didn't happen." "I know, Dad. I'm not asking to come back into the family as if nothing happened." "Then what do you want?" "I want to try to earn your forgiveness. I want to work, I want to contribute, I want to show that I've learned from my mistakes. And I want to meet Jennifer and her children who gave you what I didn't know how to give, love and respect." Jennifer, who was listening from the workshop door, approached. "Richard," she introduced herself. "I'm Jennifer." "Jennifer." He bowed respectfully. "Thank you for taking care of my parents when I didn't deserve to call them parents." "Your parents are special people, Richard, and special people deserve children worthy of them. I know I haven't been a worthy son, but I would like to try to be one if you'll allow me." Jennifer looked at Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy. She saw in their eyes the conflict between hurt and unconditional parental love. "Richard," she said, "forgiveness is something earned through actions, not words." "I understand. If you truly want to be part of this family, you'll have to prove you've changed. Not for us, but for yourself." "How can I do that?" "Working honestly, treating everyone with respect and never again causing suffering to people who only ever wanted your well-being. And if I can prove that, then you'll discover that a true family isn't perfect. It's a family that overcomes imperfections together." Richard stayed in a simple room at the back of the cooperative. He started working in cleaning, then moved to basic maintenance tasks. He didn't complain about any chore, no matter how simple it was. "He's trying hard," commented Mrs. Dorothy to Jennifer after 2 weeks. "He is. But it's still too early to know if it's real change or just desperation." "Jennifer, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, Mrs. Dorothy." "Can you forgive someone who hurt people you love?" Jennifer thought before answering. She knew Mrs. Dorothy was speaking from her own divided heart. "Being able to forgive and wanting to forgive are different things," she said. "I can forgive Richard because you and Mr. Harold are my parents, but I'll only want to forgive him when I'm sure he won't hurt you again. And how will we know that? Time will tell. People who have truly changed don't give up at the first difficulty." The first difficulty came a month later when Richard found out that Patricia worked at the cooperative and that the grandchildren spent time daily with their grandparents. "Why can she and I can't?" he asked his father angrily. "Because she asked for forgiveness and proved she changed," replied Mr. Harold. "You're still in the process of proving it. But she also abandoned you. Patricia kicked us out of the house, but she never stole from us. You forged our signature and disappeared with our money. That was 15 years ago, and you came back a month ago. Patience, Richard. Real change takes time to be recognized. Richard was outraged and decided to leave. He packed his bags and was leaving when he found Mrs. Dorothy crying in the kitchen. "Why are you crying, Mum?" "Because I thought this time you were going to stay. Everyone here treats me like a criminal." "And weren't you?" The question hurt, but Richard knew it was true. "I was, Mom, but I'm trying to change." "Then why are you leaving at the first difficulty?" "Because it's hard to be treated as a suspect all the time." "Richard," said Mrs. Dorothy, drying her tears, "when you left us on the street, wasn't it hard for us?" "It was." "And when Jennifer took us in, do you think it was easy for her to trust two strangers?" "Probably not. But she trusted, and we proved we were worthy of trust. Now it's your turn to prove it. And if I prove it, and you still can't trust me, then you'll leave with a clear conscience knowing you did your part." Richard unpacked his bags. He decided to stay and keep trying. The following months were a constant test. Some people at the cooperative treated him coldly. Others were polite but distant. Richard persevered, working well and treating everyone with respect, even when it wasn't returned. The turning point began when a family of Syrian refugees arrived at the cooperative. No one spoke Arabic, and communication was difficult. Richard approached and started speaking to them in a mix of English, Spanish, and gestures. "You speak English?" asked Sophia, surprised. "I learned it in the years I spent away. I worked with immigrants in several countries." "Can you help us understand what they need?" It was the beginning of Richard's rehabilitation. His experience with different cultures and languages proved valuable for the cooperative's social work. Gradually, people began to see him as someone useful, not just as the son who had betrayed his parents. "Richard is doing well with the refugee families," commented Jennifer to Mr. Harold. "He always had an ease for talking to different people," replied the father, proud but still cautious. "Perhaps his time on the streets taught him empathy," suggested Mrs. Dorothy. "I hope so. It would be the only good thing to come out of those lost years." The relationship between Richard and Patricia was the most difficult to rebuild. She couldn't forget that her brother had caused their parents so much suffering. "Patricia," Richard said in a direct conversation, "I know you hate me." "I don't hate you, Richard. I'm disgusted by what you did." "I understand, but can we at least be civil for our parents?" "I can be civil, but don't ask me to pretend I've forgotten or forgiven." "I'm not asking that. I'm only asking for a chance to show I've changed. You've had chances, and you wasted them all." "Patricia, you've also made mistakes with our parents." "Yes, I have. But I never stole from them. I never forged their signatures. I never disappeared for 15 years of their lives." It was true, and Richard knew it. His betrayal had been far more serious than his sister's mistakes. "You're right," he admitted. "I can't compare what I did to your mistakes, but I can try to make the rest of their lives better because I'm here." "How?" "By being the son I should have been from the start." Patricia didn't answer, but Richard noticed she was at least listening. The turning point came when Mr. Harold fell ill at work. It was a mild heart attack, but it frightened the whole family. Richard was the one who found him collapsed in the workshop and immediately called for help. "Dad, stay with me," he shouted on the way to the hospital. "Don't leave me now that we're understanding each other again." At the hospital, Richard never left the bedside. When Mr. Harold woke up from surgery, he found his son holding his hand and crying. "Richard." "I'm here, Dad." "I'm not leaving anymore. My son." For the first time in 15 years, Mr. Harold called Richard son without pain in his voice. "Dad, forgive me for being such a terrible son." "Richard, you weren't terrible. You were lost, but now you're found." "How can you be so sure?" "Because a son who stays at the hospital for 3 days caring for his father, who cries from fear of losing him, who dedicates months trying to regain trust, that son isn't faking love." Jennifer, Mrs. Dorothy, and Patricia watched the conversation from the doorway. They all cried seeing the reconciliation between father and son. "Richard," said Mrs. Dorothy, approaching, "welcome back to the family." "Mom." He hugged her, as he hadn't in decades. "Patricia," said Mr. Harold from the bed, "your brother has come home." Patricia hesitated for a few seconds, but then approached and hugged Richard. "Welcome back, brother." "Thank you, sister." And thank you for taking care of our parents when I wasn't here. Now we'll take care of them together." Jennifer watched the scene with a full heart. Another family was being healed by the power of forgiveness and a second chance. With Mr. Harold recovering well, the family felt complete for the first time in decades. Richard was officially accepted as a cooperative member and began coordinating the Refugee and Immigrant Welcome Project. "I never thought I'd see my two children working together again," confessed Mrs. Dorothy to Jennifer. "And working to help other people," added Jennifer. "It's the best form of healing, turning pain into strength for good." "Jennifer, can I ask you a question I've always wanted to ask, but never had the courage?" "Of course, Mrs. Dorothy." "Why did you take us in that day? You already had 6 children to raise alone. Why complicate your life more?" Jennifer thought about the answer, as she always did when someone asked this. "Mrs. Dorothy, that day I wasn't thinking about my life or my difficulties. I was looking at 2 people who needed help. And when you see someone needing help, you don't calculate cost and benefit. You simply help. But weren't you afraid that we might be bad people?" "Of course I was. But I was more afraid of becoming a bad person if I didn't help." "How so?" "If I had walked right past you at that bus stop, would I have slept peacefully knowing 2 elderly people were out in the cold? Probably not. So I wasn't saving you. I was saving my own conscience." Mrs. Dorothy smiled, recognizing the simple but profound wisdom of Jennifer. "And today, if you could go back in time, would you do it all again?" "I'd do everything the same," Jennifer replied without hesitation. "You gave me much more than I gave you." "What, for example?" "You gave me parents. You gave grandparents to my children. You taught me that family is built with love and dedication. And most importantly what? You taught me that everyone deserves a second chance, even people who messed up badly like Richard." "Do you really believe he changed?" "I do, because I saw you change too." "We changed?" "You arrived here sad, hopeless, feeling like a burden to everyone. Today you are respected community leaders across the country. If you managed that transformation, why couldn't Richard?" The following year, the cooperative received national recognition. It was elected the Best Solidarity Economy Initiative in the United States, an award that came with a financial grant to expand the social projects. "What should we do with this money?" Brandon asked in a general meeting of the cooperative members. "I propose we build a training center," Jennifer suggested, "a place where we can receive people from other cities and teach our model." "Good idea," agreed Mr. Harold. "That way we don't need to travel so much. People come to us. And we can create a technical course in cooperativism," added Emily, "to train multipliers." "I like it," Patricia supported. "My children could help as tutors." The idea evolved quickly. In 6 months, the Mrs. Dorothy Cooperative Education Center was under construction, the name chosen in honor of the matriarch who had become a symbol of resilience and fresh starts. "Why is the center going to have my name?" asked Mrs. Dorothy, embarrassed by the tribute. "Because you represent everything we teach here," Jennifer explained. "Overcoming, wisdom, welcome, and the certainty that it's always possible to start over." "But Jennifer, you're the one who made all this happen." "Mrs. Dorothy, I offered a roof. You and Mr. Harold offered values, experience, grandparents' love. Without you, my children would have grown up different." "So we were all important." "Exactly. And that's what we teach at the center, that social transformation happens together, not individually." The center's inauguration was a national event. Politicians, business people, social leaders, and representatives from cooperatives across the country were present. "This center represents the United States we want," said the Secretary of Social Development in the opening speech. "A country where the economy serves the people, not the other way around. A country where no one is discarded because of age, social condition, or past mistakes," he continued, looking at Richard in the audience. "A country where family is who stays, work is dignity, and solidarity is the foundation of prosperity." The most emotional moment was when they called the entire founding family to cut the ribbon. Jennifer, her 6 children, Mr. Harold, Mrs. Dorothy, Patricia, Richard, Nathan and Madison, all together symbolizing that family is built with love and choice. And 18 years ago, Jennifer said into the microphone, I was a desperate single mother trying to support 6 children. Mr. Harold and Mrs. Dorothy were 2 abandoned elderly people sleeping at a bus stop. Today we are a family of over 200 people, a company that employs 500 workers, and a center that has already established cooperatives in 300 cities. This happened because we believe that every person has value, every job has dignity, and every family can grow to welcome those in need. This center is not ours. It belongs to everyone who believes that a better United States is built with cooperation, not competition. Welcome to the Mrs. Dorothy Center. May it train thousands of multipliers of love and solidarity. The center became an international reference. Delegations from other countries came to study the American model of solidarity economy based on family and community ties. You have created something unique, said a UN consultant during a visit. You have managed to unite economic efficiency with integral human development. We didn't create anything, replied Mrs. Dorothy, now 90 years old and still active as a center advisor. We just applied what every mother knows. Take good care of those you love. But you applied it on a business scale. Because a company can also be a family, interjected Mr. Harold, 88 years old, still teaching carpentry classes. You just have to treat workers the way you would want your children to be treated. Jennifer, now 55 and recognized as one of the country's leading experts in solidarity economy, continued to live in the same simple house and maintain the family habits. Jennifer, asked an international journalist, don't you regret not having pursued personal wealth with all this success? What greater wealth is there than having 6 accomplished children, 2 parents I love, grandchildren who respect me, and a prosperous community? But financially, I have everything I need. My own home, food on the table, health, education for the children. What more does a person need? And your children? Wouldn't they like more luxury? My children learned that luxury is having a united family. They all studied, they all have professions they enjoy, they all contribute to a better community. What greater luxury is that? The journalist had no answer. She came from a country where success was measured only by individual financial accumulation and couldn't understand a logic based on collective prosperity. May I speak with your children? Of course, they are all here working. The interviews with Jennifer's children confirmed that the family philosophy had been completely absorbed. Brandon, asked the journalist, didn't you want to be an independent businessman, earn more money? I am a businessman, he replied at 28. I am a partner in a prosperous company. I make important decisions. I have a solid career. But you could earn more working for a multinational. I could earn more money, but I would lose purpose. Here my work improves the lives of hundreds of families. And is that worth the salary difference? It's worth the difference of waking up every day knowing I am building something important. Emily, at 25 and already recognized as a designer, had a similar answer. I have offers to work in New York and even abroad, she said. But here, I can use my creativity to generate income for our community. I created a brand that now sells across the United States and part of the Profit Fund's scholarships for young people in the region. That wouldn't be possible if I had gone to a big company. Timothy, Peter, Anna Marie, and Sophia had similar stories. They all had opportunities for individual careers but chose the collective project. You brainwashed these kids, the journalist commented to Jennifer, not realizing how offensive the phrase was. I didn't brainwash anyone, Jennifer replied firmly. I offered an example of life. They chose to follow it. What example? That true success is making a difference in the lives of the people you love. That true wealth is having a united family and a prosperous community. But isn't that utopia? What is utopia? Having a center that has already trained 1,000 cooperatives? To have a company that never fired anyone? To have a family of 3 generations where everyone respects and supports each other? If that's a utopia, then we live in a real utopia. The article by the international journalist resonated worldwide, putting Hopeville Mid-State on the map as an example of sustainable development based on a solidarity economy. We've become a tourist attraction, joked Richard. who now coordinated the international visits. "Better than being a tourist attraction for problems," replied Patricia, responsible for the center's communications. "And the most important thing," added Nathan, now an engineering graduate and project coordinator, "is that every visit results in new cooperatives being formed. There are already over 2,000 cooperatives inspired by our model," said Madison, a psychology graduate responsible for family services. "That means at least 50,000 people with jobs and dignity." "And families being formed and rebuilt everywhere," completed Jennifer. "Because the model works. When you take good care of people, they take good care of the business." On the 20th anniversary of the meeting at the bus stop, the celebration took over the entire town of Hopeville. There were 3 days of festivities with cultural performances, a cooperative fair, seminars on the solidarity economy, and a lot of emotion. 20 years, said Mrs. Dorothy in the opening speech, at 95 years old, still lucid and active. 20 years that changed not only our lives, but the lives of thousands of people. When Jennifer found us at that bus stop, we were 2 hopeless old people. Today, we are great-grandparents of a family of over 1,000 people. Because family, my dears, has no size limit. It only has a limit of love, and love has no limit. Mr. Harold, at 93, still gave talks to groups of seniors about how to start over after 70. "So, folks," he said to an audience of 200 seniors, "I'll tell you a secret. The best phase of my life began after 70, because that's when I learned that age isn't about how many years you've lived, but about how many years you still have ahead. And if you use those years to love and help people, every day will be a new adventure." Jennifer, at 60, still worked actively, but was already planning to pass the general coordination to the next generation. "The time has come for our children to lead," she said in a family meeting. "They are prepared and have the energy to take this further." "But Jennifer," protested Brandon, "you still have so much to contribute." "I do, and I will continue to contribute, but not as the main leader." "What will your role be?" "The same that Mrs. Dorothy and Mr. Harold have today. Advisor, grandmother, living memory of our values, and I will dedicate myself more to writing our story." Many people asked to know the details of how it all began. The idea of writing a book excited the whole family. It would be a way to perpetuate the teachings and inspire other people around the world. "What title should we give?" asked Emily. "From the bus stop to the world," suggested Sophia. "Or Family by Choice," proposed Timothy. "I like Love Multiplies," said Anna Marie. "How about United Hands?" suggested Peter, "like our cooperative." Jennifer listened to the suggestions, smiling. They were all good, but she already had an idea. "There's always room for one more," she said, "because that has been our philosophy from day one." Everyone agreed. It was the perfect title for their story. The book was written collectively, with each family member contributing their memories and reflections. Mrs. Dorothy dictated her memories of the early days to Madison. Mr. Harold described the challenges of starting over in his later years. Jennifer narrated the difficult decisions and moments of doubt. The children told what it was like growing up in an unconventional family. "Mom," said Brandon during a writing session, "do you have any idea of the scale of what we've created?" "What scale?" 2,000 cooperatives, 100,000 jobs generated, 500,000 people directly impacted, and that's only counting the projects we have on record. Brandon, numbers are important, but that's not what makes me proudest. What makes you proudest? The fact that your siblings grew up knowing that every person has value, that Nathan and Madison learned to value their grandparents, that Richard got a second chance and took it, that Patricia regained her love for her parents. That is worth more than all the numbers in the world. The launch of the book, There's Always Room for One More, was a national success. In 3 months, it sold 100,000 copies and was translated into 12 languages. "Our phone hasn't stopped ringing," said Patricia, who was in charge of publicity. "Requests for talks, invitations to events, requests for consulting. And letters," added Richard. "Hundreds of letters from people telling their own stories of overcoming." "That makes me happier than the sales," said Jennifer. "It means we're inspiring real transformations." One of the most moving letters came from an 80-year-old woman from Boston. Dear Jennifer, I'm Alice. I'm 80 years old and was preparing to go to a nursing home because my children said they can't take care of me anymore. After reading your book, I decided not to give up. I managed to gather 5 other ladies in my situation, and we started a knitting and embroidery cooperative. Today we support our own expenses and even help other families. Thank you for teaching me that it's always time for a fresh start. Look at this, Mrs. Dorothy. Jennifer showed her the letter. An 80-year-old lady starting a cooperative after reading our story. That's beautiful, Mrs. Dorothy said, moved. It means our hardships were good for something. They were good for a lot, and they will continue to be. At the end of the 20th anniversary, the family gathered at the bus stop where it all began for one last intimate celebration. Let's make a toast, suggested Jennifer, raising a glass of juice. To what? Asked Timothy. To the best choices we made in life. What choices were those? Gabriel wanted to know. Choosing to help instead of passing by. Choosing to trust instead of distrust. Choosing to forgive instead of holding a grudge. Choosing to stay together instead of splitting up in hard times. And especially, added Mrs. Dorothy, choosing to love more instead of loving less. Because love is the only thing in the world that grows when you share it, completed Mr. Harold. Everyone made the toast in silence, thinking of the extraordinary journey that had begun on that simple wooden bench. You know what else amazes me? Said Emily after the toast. What? Several asked at once. It's that if someone told this story as fiction, people would say it's impossible, too beautiful to be true. But it is true, smiled Jennifer, and that proves that real life can be more beautiful than any fiction. When you choose to do good. And accept that good comes back to you multiplied, added Patricia. Even if sometimes it takes a little while to come back, remembered Richard, thinking of his own mistakes and the road back to the family. The important thing is not to give up believing that people can change and that love always conquers fear, said Madison. When night fell and everyone was preparing to go home, Jennifer took one last look at the bus stop. Thank you, she whispered, to the place that had changed her life. Thank you for what? Asked Mrs. Dorothy, who heard the whisper. For being the setting of the best meeting of my life. We're the ones who thank you, Jennifer, said Mr. Harold, hugging his adoptive daughter. You saved us. No, she smiled, returning the hug. We saved each other. And so ended another day in the life of the most unlikely and beautiful family in Hopeville Midstate. A family that proved that a home isn't inherited, it's built. That blood doesn't make a family, love does. And that there is always room for one more when you have a generous heart and open arms. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story of overcoming and fresh starts. Do you know any family that was formed this way, by choice and not by blood? Which part moved you the most? Leave your comment and share your opinion. If you liked it, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the heart. Thank you so much.